They mocked him, underestimated him, and thought he wouldn't fight. Back until one perfectly executed move left the school. In stunned silence, the Max stood at the gates of Redmond High, his eyes scanning the white-painted iron fence. The morning sunlight gleamed off the spotless glass windows, reflecting a world too pristine, too flawless to feel real. Max took a deep breath, his broad shoulders tensing before relaxing again. Everything here felt too clean, too organized, so different from his old school in Birmingham, where the walls were alive with colorful graffiti and students' mural art. Back there, you could always hear someone beatboxing in the stairwell or laughter echoing down the halls. "This is going to be a fresh start," his mom had said with hopeful eyes. His dad, always more straightforward, had called it a necessary change. But Max wasn't so sure. As he walked through the main entrance, he could feel it immediately. The subtle glances, the whispered comments, the quick, judgmental looks. They weren't staring outright. That would be too obvious. But the fleeting glances and murmured conversations made it clear. He was the outsider. Max wasn't small for a 16-year-old. Standing 5 feet 10 inches with a lean, athletic build, shaped by years of martial arts training. His movements were precise, disciplined, reflecting the lessons his father, a former Marine, had drilled into him. Strength isn't about showing off, it's about staying calm. Yet here he looked out of place. His confident posture and quiet demeanor didn't blend into the school's rigid, sterile atmosphere. As he walked to the front office to pick up his schedule, he caught sight of a group of students by the lockers. One of them, a tall, muscular guy with perfectly styled blonde hair, leaned against the metal doors, smirking while his friends laughed at some inside joke. Max glanced at his schedule again and noticed the name, Ryan Callow. The guy's eyes met Max's for a second, curiosity mixed with something colder. Max knew that look all too well, the kind that weighed whether to make a problem out of him. Max didn't react, just kept walking past them without a word. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "Don't give them what they want. Control your reaction." But even as he walked away, Max couldn't shake the feeling that this wouldn't be the last time he crossed paths with Ryan Callow and his crew. He could sense the tension in the air, the quiet before a storm. It had only been a few days since Max set foot in Redmond High, but the feeling of being an outsider hadn't faded. Despite his best efforts to stay calm and keep his head down, the air around him remained heavy with judgment. To Max it was clear. In this place, silence was seen as weakness. And Ryan, the guy who ruled the social hierarchy like a king, had picked up on that faster than anyone else. One afternoon between classes, Max was double-checking his schedule near his locker when a sudden, forceful bump hit his shoulder. He stumbled slightly but kept his balance. Glancing up, he found himself face to face with Ryan, his arrogant smirk already plastered on his face. Flanking him were his loyal sidekicks, Zach and Brandon, both snickering like hyenas. "Watch it, Mercer," Ryan sneered, his tone dripping with disdain. "You think you own the place now?" Max didn't respond, just took a breath and straightened his posture. He remembered his dad's advice. Never react with anger. Stay in control. So he kept his gaze level, not letting Ryan's intimidation get to him. But Ryan wasn't done. He took another step closer, his voice just loud enough to carry through the hallway. "What's the matter? Can't talk? Or are you just too dumb to figure out how?" Ryan scoffed, glancing back at his friends who burst into laughter. Max clenched his jaw, keeping his emotions in check. He knew engaging with Ryan would only feed into the guy's need to dominate. It wasn't fear that kept Max quiet. It was discipline. Fighting back would only escalate things, and he wasn't about to give Ryan the satisfaction. Ryan seemed annoyed by Max's lack of reaction. He shoved Max's shoulder harder this time, making his book slip slightly from his grasp. The mocking laughter from Ryan's posse only grew louder. But Max didn't flinch. He just tightened his grip on his books, breathed in deeply, and walked away, refusing to give Ryan what he wanted. As he moved down the hallway, Max could feel Ryan's gaze boring into his back, seething at being ignored. He knew that to guys like Ryan, being dismissed was almost worse than losing a fight. Max sensed that this wasn't over. Ryan wouldn't let it go that easily. In the days that followed, the subtle harassment continued. Ryan made a point of bumping into Max in crowded hallways, muttering insults just loud enough to be heard. During gym class, Ryan accidentally knocked Max down during a basketball game, claiming it was just part of the sport. The teachers didn't question it. Ryan was the star athlete, and no one dared challenge him. Max didn't bother telling anyone. Not his parents, not the teachers. He knew how it would go. Ryan would get away with it, and he just looked like another complainer. So he kept his head down, swallowing his frustration and focusing on staying calm. But he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that sooner or later, something was going to give. Friday lunchtime at Redmond High was always loud and chaotic. The cafeteria buzzed with laughter and chatter as students clustered around tables, gossiping and swapping stories from the week. Max sat alone in a corner, minding his own business, trying to tune out the noise. He was halfway through his sandwich when he felt it, a sudden presence looming over his table. Ryan stood there, grinning smugly, flanked as always by Zach and Brandon. His voice carried across the room, loud enough to catch everyone's attention. "Hey, Mercer, you don't talk much, huh? What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" Ryan taunted, tilting his head with mock curiosity. Max didn't look up, just kept chewing slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. Ignoring Ryan had worked so far. Why change that now? But Ryan wasn't one to let go of an opportunity to humiliate someone. With a quick motion, he snatched the apple from Max's tray and hurled it across the cafeteria. It bounced off the floor, landing near the drink station. A few heads turned, some students watching with curiosity, others with discomfort. Still, Max didn't react. He set his fork down deliberately, his movements precise and controlled. That only seemed to infuriate Ryan more. Thinking Max's silence was a sign of fear, Ryan smirked and leaned in, shoving Max's shoulder hard enough to make the tray rattle. "Come on, Mercer, do something," Ryan sneered, his tone dripping with challenge. Max inhaled deeply, his father's words echoing in his mind. "You don't fight with anger, you fight with control." He slowly stood up, pushing his chair back with deliberate calmness. The cafeteria seemed to hold its breath, every eye glued to the unfolding scene. Ryan's smirk widened. "Oh, we got a tough guy now. You gonna swing? Act like a thug?" Max remained calm, his gaze fixed steadily on Ryan's face. Ryan took that as a challenge and moved to shove him again. But before Ryan's hands could reach him, Max's left hand shot up, gripping Ryan's wrist with precision. In a flash, his right hand clamped onto Ryan's elbow, and with a fluid, practiced motion, Max pivoted his hips and leveraged Ryan's own momentum against him. Ryan's feet left the ground as he flipped over Max's shoulder, crashing down onto the cafeteria floor with a loud thud. The room fell completely silent. Ryan lay sprawled on the cold tiles, gasping for breath, his expression a mix of shock and confusion. Zach and Brandon froze, their confidence crumbling as they watched their leader humiliated. Max didn't even spare them a glance. Instead, he crouched down beside Ryan, his voice calm and even. "Don't touch me again," he said softly. Not a threat, just a statement of fact. Standing back up, Max dusted off his hands like he just moved a chair rather than a person. Picking up his tray, he returned to his seat without another word. The room remained dead silent for a long moment before whispers broke out, spreading like wildfire. "Did you see that?" one student murmured. "He just flipped him like it was nothing." Somewhere at the back, someone let out a low whistle. Others pulled out their phones, either recording the aftermath or texting about what just happened. Meanwhile, Ryan stayed on the floor, too stunned to move, his pride shattered into 1,000 pieces. Max didn't bother looking back. He knew that moment would change things. He didn't feel triumphant, just calm, resolved. He had done what needed to be done without losing control. As he finished his lunch, he could still feel the eyes on him, no longer filled with pity, but with a newfound respect. The cafeteria remained eerily silent after Ryan hit the floor. His body sprawled out like a fallen statue. No one moved, no one spoke, as if the entire room was frozen in disbelief. Ryan's friends, Zach and Brandon, stood rooted to the spot, their faces pale with shock. A few students whispered to each other, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Max calmly picked up his tray and continued eating, as if nothing had happened. His movements were deliberate, unbothered by the stunned eyes locked onto him. He knew this wasn't the end, just the calm before the real storm. He could feel the tension simmering, could sense the chaos brewing just beneath the surface. Within minutes, the news of what happened spread through the school like wildfire. Text messages flew back and forth, videos of the takedown circulated in group chats, and rumors morphed the story into something even more dramatic than it already was. Everyone had an opinion, and most of them couldn't believe that Ryan Callow, the school's star athlete, had been taken down so effortlessly by the new kid. Ryan finally picked himself up, his face flushed red with humiliation. His jaw clenched as he glanced around, realizing that everyone had seen his downfall. He locked eyes with Max for a split second, but this time, the arrogance was gone. Instead, there was only rage and something else. Fear. Without saying a word, he stormed out of the cafeteria, his friends trailing behind him, unsure of what to do. Max knew better than to let his guard down. He wasn't naive. Guys like Ryan didn't just accept defeat. They plotted, they schemed, and they always made sure payback was as public as the humiliation. Later that afternoon, as Max walked toward the gym, his phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "You think you're tough? This isn't over. Watch your back." Max sighed, locking his phone and slipping it back into his pocket. He wasn't surprised, just resigned. This kind of retaliation was predictable. He could almost hear his dad's voice in his head. People who can't control their anger always come back for more. Stay calm and stay ready. That evening at dinner, his mom noticed his quiet demeanor and glanced at him with concern. "Everything okay at school, honey?" she asked, setting down her fork. Max forced a small smile. "Yeah, just a normal day," he replied, not wanting to worry her. His dad, sitting across the table, gave him a knowing look but didn't push for details. That was his way, waiting for Max to come forward on his own. In his room later that night, Max sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone as more texts poured in from classmates, some congratulating him, others warning him about Ryan's inevitable revenge. He knew he couldn't let his guard down. Winning one battle didn't mean the war was over. The next morning, when he walked into school, everything felt different. Conversations hushed as he passed. Students gave him respectful nods or wary glances. Some whispered behind his back, but Max kept his head high, moving with the same calm confidence as always. He wasn't here to be a hero or a legend. He just wanted to be left alone. But deep down, he knew that things would never be the same again. He had made his stand, and now he had to face the aftermath, whatever it might be. By Monday morning, Redmond High was buzzing with whispers and rumors. The story of how Max had taken down Ryan in the cafeteria had spread like wildfire. Most students couldn't stop talking about it, while others looked at Max with newfound respect or fear. But not everyone was impressed. Word had it that Ryan and his father were planning something big. That afternoon, as Max was heading to his next class, Mason appeared at his side, her expression serious and tense. "Max," she called out, catching up with him. "We've got a problem." He glanced at her, staying calm as always. "What's going on?" Mason took a deep breath before speaking. "Ryan's dad, Mr. Callow, he's on the school board. He's pulling strings to get you expelled. He's saying you attacked Ryan unprovoked and that you're a violent threat to other students." Max didn't react outwardly, but inside he felt a flicker of anger. He knew Ryan wouldn't let it go easily, but using his father's influence to destroy him was low, even for Ryan. Mason leaned closer, determination flashing in her eyes. "We can't just let this happen. We need proof that you were defending yourself. I know some students recorded the fight. We have to get those videos and statements from witnesses." Max hesitated. "Are you sure you want to get involved? This could get ugly." Mason gave him a reassuring smile. "I'm not letting them railroad you. You didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not going to stand by and watch them twist the truth." With Mason's help, Max started gathering evidence. They tracked down the students who had recorded the incident, convincing them to share the videos. One clip showed the whole confrontation, from Ryan throwing the first shove to Max's precise takedown. They also managed to get several classmates to write statements confirming that Ryan had been the aggressor. The next day, Max and Mason walked into the principal's office, where Ryan and his father were already waiting. Mr. Callow stood tall, his presence imposing, clearly confident that his influence would secure Max's punishment. "My son was viciously attacked by this boy," Mr. Callow stated firmly. "I demand immediate expulsion. We don't tolerate violent delinquents at Redmond High." The principal looked uneasy, unsure how to respond. But Mason stepped forward, handing over the video evidence and the witness statements. "Before making any decisions, I think you should watch this," Mason said confidently. The principal played the video, his eyes widening as he saw Ryan clearly provoking and shoving Max first. When the video ended, he glanced at Mr. Callow, whose face had turned red with frustration. "This evidence clearly shows that Max acted in self-defense," the principal said firmly. "We will not be pursuing disciplinary action against him. In fact, I think Ryan needs to reflect on his own behavior." Mr. Callow tried to argue, but the truth was undeniable. Max remained silent, his calm presence unshaken by the tension. As the Callows left the office, defeated and humiliated, Mason nudged Max with a small smile. "Told you we'd get it sorted," she whispered. Max gave her a slight nod, grateful but not triumphant. It wasn't about winning, it was about protecting his integrity. Walking out of the office, he felt lighter, knowing that justice had prevailed not through violence, but through truth and determination. After the meeting in the principal's office, the atmosphere at Redmond High shifted significantly. Ryan Callow's once intimidating presence seemed to fade into the background, his reputation as the school's untouchable star shattered. The story of his humiliation, both on the cafeteria floor and in the principal's office, had made its way through the entire school. Ryan stayed home for the next few days, too embarrassed to show his face. Meanwhile, Max returned to his usual routine, moving through the hallways with his usual calm, quiet confidence. Some students gave him respectful nods, others whispered with newfound curiosity or admiration. But Max didn't care about the attention. He wasn't seeking glory, just peace. One afternoon, while sitting alone on the bleachers of the empty gym, Max heard familiar footsteps approaching. Mason appeared, carrying 2 cans of soda, handing one to Max without saying a word. She sat down next to him, giving him a teasing smirk. "So, Redmond's new legend just wants to be left alone, huh?" she quipped. Max shrugged, cracking open the can. "I didn't do it to be a legend. I just wanted him to stop." Mason looked at him thoughtfully. "Yeah, but you did more than just stop him. You made people see that they don't have to be scared of bullies like Ryan. That's something worth being proud of." Max sipped his drink, mulling over her words. Pride wasn't what he felt, more like relief. Relief that he hadn't let his anger take control. relief that he had defended himself without losing his sense of who he was. "I just didn't want to lose my cool," he said softly. "My dad always said strength isn't about showing off. It's about knowing when to stand up and when to walk away." Mason smiled, nudging his shoulder. "Well, you did both. Walked away when you needed to and stood your ground when it mattered. That's what makes you different from guys like Ryan." The next week, when Ryan finally returned to school, he was noticeably quieter. No more cocky smirks, no more loud jokes at other people's expense. He kept his head down, avoiding confrontation. It was clear that the fight had changed him. Maybe not entirely, but enough to make him rethink his actions. One afternoon, as Max was leaving the gym after practice, he spotted Ryan standing awkwardly by the entrance. Ryan hesitated, then mumbled, "Look, I'm not going to apologize or anything, but I get it now." Max didn't respond, just gave a small nod. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't hatred either. It was just understanding. Ryan seemed to accept that and walked away without another word. As the sun set over the school grounds, Max felt a sense of calm wash over him. It wasn't about winning or proving anything. It was about staying true to himself. Mason had been right all along. Being strong didn't mean being the toughest guy around. It meant knowing who you were and never letting anyone take that away from you. Max learned that real strength doesn't come from throwing punches or showing off power. It comes from controlling your emotions and knowing when to stand up for yourself. The battle at Redmond High wasn't just about physical confrontation. It was about dignity, integrity, and the courage to defend oneself without giving in to anger. Taking down Ryan didn't bring Max any sense of triumph. It wasn't victory he felt, but relief. Relief that he hadn't let his frustration take over, that he hadn't lost himself in the heat of the moment. His real success wasn't in defeating Ryan physically, but in proving to himself that he could stay calm and collected, even under pressure. Mason was right when she said that not everyone has the courage to stand up against someone like Ryan, but Max knew that if he hadn't defended himself that day, the bullying would have continued. Sometimes it's not just about fighting back. It's about showing that you won't be pushed around or made to feel small. Standing your ground isn't just about standing tall in the face of danger. It's about standing firm in your values and maintaining your composure. It's about letting the truth speak louder than lies and showing that strength lies not in violence, but in character. In the end, Max understood that life would always be full of challenges and people who would try to break his spirit. But by staying true to himself, he could face anything without losing his sense of identity. Real courage is not just in the act of fighting back, but in choosing to fight smart, with patience, truth, and unwavering resolve.